In 1961, the CIA buried a nuclear reactor under Antarctic ice, and nobody knows if they ever got it back. That's not hyperbole. Right here in the declassified files, you can see the memo dated March 1961. The U.S. government authorized Operation Sunshine, a classified program to embed a portable nuclear power plant beneath the Ross Ice Shelf. The official story, scientific research. The actual story, something far more complicated and far more dangerous. Let me walk you back to where this begins. It's 1958. The Soviet Union has just launched Sputnik. America's terrified. And the U.S. Navy is looking at Antarctica like it's the next frontier, a blank slate where they could establish a foothold, conduct secret research, maybe even hide something valuable if things went hot with Moscow. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 had just been signed. It banned military bases, weapons testing, and fortifications on the continent. But there was a loophole, and the CIA saw it immediately. Scientific research stations, those were allowed, and if you buried a reactor under the ice for scientific heating and power, well, that wasn't technically a weapons installation. Enter the SNAP-10A, a compact nuclear reactor designed by Atomics International. Weighing just 385 pounds, it could run on its own for years. The CIA's plan was audacious: establish Camp Century, a covert base on the Greenland ice sheet powered by this reactor, but that was just the cover operation. The real plan involved Antarctica. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, wanted to bore tunnels deep into the Ross Ice Shelf, bury the reactor, and use it to power a secret surveillance network. The goal: monitor Soviet activity across the Southern Ocean without Moscow knowing a thing. Now here's where the irony hits. This telegram from December 1960, you can see the routing marks, shows the State Department had serious doubts. They worried the reactor would contaminate the ice sheet. They worried about Soviet discovery. They worried about what happened if the reactor failed beneath 2 kilometers of ice. But the CIA pushed forward anyway. In 1961, the SNAP-10A was loaded onto a U.S. Navy plane bound for the Antarctic coast. The reactor was shielded, but minimally. There were no fail-safes that would have satisfied modern standards, and the men who installed it, they had almost no training in nuclear containment. For about 3 years, the reactor hummed beneath the ice. It powered the surveillance equipment. It heated the tunnels. And then in 1964, something went wrong. The exact details are still redacted, but what we know is this: the reactor began to fail. The decision came down from on high: abandon the site, don't recover the reactor, leave it there, and that's what they did. In 1964, the CIA sealed the tunnels, evacuated the personnel, and walked away from a radioactive nuclear reactor buried under the Antarctic ice shelf. For decades, nobody talked about it. The operation was classified. The reactor was forgotten, or so the CIA hoped. But in 2013, when the National Security Archive declassified the files, historians started asking uncomfortable questions. Where exactly was the reactor? Was it still intact? Was it leaking? The answers weren't reassuring. The reactor had been left in a tunnel that was slowly being buried deeper into the ice sheet. As the ice moved and shifted, and Antarctic ice moves constantly, the reactor was being crushed, compressed, potentially fractured. The containment was degrading. In 2017, a team of researchers actually went looking for Camp Century. They found it, they found the tunnels, they found traces of the reactor site, and they found something else. The ice was melting faster than anyone expected. Climate change was accelerating the thaw. The nightmare scenario was suddenly real. If the ice melted, the reactor would be exposed. If it was fractured, radioactive material could leach into the Southern Ocean. This wasn't a theoretical risk anymore. It was a ticking clock buried in ice. The U.S. government was forced to acknowledge the problem. In 2018, they commissioned a study. Researchers concluded that the reactor could remain stable for another 50 to 100 years, maybe. But maybe isn't a guarantee, and nobody can predict what climate change will do to ice melt rates. What's remarkable about this story isn't just the recklessness, though it was reckless. It's the compartmentalization. The State Department didn't know what DARPA was doing. The Navy didn't know what the CIA planned. And the men on the ground, they were following orders they didn't fully understand. This telegram right here from 1965 shows that someone in the government knew the reactor was a liability. But by then, the decision had been made. And in the Cold War logic of the time, a buried reactor was preferable to admitting the operation had failed. So they left it, and they classified the files. Today, the SNAP-10A still sits under the Antarctic ice. It's not an active threat yet, but it's a monument to a very specific kind of Cold War thinking, the belief that you could solve geopolitical problems by burying them, literally. The real question isn't whether the reactor will leak. It's what we'll discover about other operations like it, other secrets buried in remote places, waiting for the ice to melt and expose what governments hoped would stay hidden forever. Subscribe. Every week we uncover another classified operation that nearly changed the world, and most people still don't know it happened.